What's up, YouTube? This is Too Raw for Sports. All right. So before I get into this video, I want to give a shout out to one of my subscribers for showing love to the channel. Much respect to Billy Like Jr. for showing love via the Cash App. He said in his note, I believe he said, I love the content on your channel. Hope you're doing okay. And I'm doing all right, Billy. You know what I'm saying? I'm doing all right. You know what I'm saying? Just enjoying this Saturday. Um, put out some content on the Patreon. Was on LB's live stream earlier, putting out some content on my other channels. Um, I can't complain, you know what I'm saying, me personally. We all have our little problems, but at the end of the day, they pale in comparison to someone else's problems. I'm kind of thinking about the people on the Gulf Coast region right now. They are preparing for a major storm. Um, Hurricane Ida is projected to be a Category 4 storm, which would make it actually a little bit stronger than Katrina. And the fact that it's so ironic is that tomorrow will be 16 years to the day that Hurricane Katrina struck New Orleans. You know, so we just got to see what happens. Hopefully, it's not as bad, but you never know. But let me switch gears to sports. So the one LBZ reminded me of this topic because I had meant to talk about this, but I forgot to do a video about it. So recently, Shaq agreed with a post, might have been an Instagram post, which had him as the fourth greatest center of all time behind Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Wilt Chamberlain, and Bill Russell. So they talked about this on Undisputed. Shannon had a very measured, understandable take on this, but it's Skip Bayless that just infuriates me. Okay, he changes questions. This is what I don't like about him. He changes questions to fit into his narrative. This was everybody pretty much would agree that when you're talking about someone being the greatest of all time, you try to encompass their entire career, the total body of work. No, he puts it into this person's peak, this person's peak. Well, if we're going to go by peaks, then Penny Hardaway should be in the Hall of Fame. Grant Hill should be recognized as a top 10 all-time small forward. Bernard King should be in that conversation. If we're just going by peaks, okay? But he knows damn well what the question was. So he talks about Shaq's peak between 99 and 2002 or 2003. Now, Shaq was so dominant, winning 3 NBA championships, 3 Finals MVPs. I mean, just remarkably dominant, and I give him that. Shaq was a remarkably dominant player at that particular time. But we got to also keep an eye. We got to also keep it real about something. Um, it's not like Shaq was going up against other great centers at that time. All of the great centers had either retired or were decaying on bad teams, or you know, were just about gone. I mean, 2000, Elijah Wan was a shell of himself in Houston, about to be traded. Patrick Ewing was even more of a shell of himself. Gary Robinson was a shell of himself, but he was still playing because he became second banana to Tim Duncan. Rick Smits was just about out the door. Arvidas Sabonis, fat and old. Kareem Abdul-Jabbar had been retired for a decade. Moses Malone had been retired for 5 years. So all the great centers, even some of the good centers, Jack Sikma, who's a borderline Hall of Fame, he's in the Hall of Fame now. He had been retired for a decade or about 9 years. So all of these great centers, Brad Daugherty, see you later. All these guys were gone. So Shaq was going up against guys like Keith Kloss, and uh, Todd McCullough. He was going up against guys like old ass Tyrone Hill, aging Dikembe Mutombo, an Alonzo Mourning that desperately needed a kidney transplant. Okay, I'm not trying to knock Shaq, man. I'm not, but we gotta also be realistic about the situation there. Okay, let's be realistic. When these guys were in their primes, Patrick Ewing and David Robinson and Olajuwon, they were kicking his ass. Me personally, while I don't have as much regard for Bill Russell as some other people do, me personally, I would have had Wilt, Kareem, uh, and Olajuwon ahead of him. And I can make an argument. I'm not saying that, that he's supposed to be ahead of him, but I can make a strong argument that Moses Malone is better than him. And you can make the argument that Bill Russell's better than him too, in some ways. But it's funny. Whenever I remember around the time that Shaq was going around lying, saying Dave Robinson wouldn't sign his autograph, some shit that he admitted he lied about years later. I remember that game came on national television, and Dave Robinson dropped 45 points on Shaq in Orlando. I remember there was a game in the 93-94 season, I think, the NBA or NBC. Patrick Ewing dropped 40 on him, saying, I'm the best center in the Eastern Conference. I remember, uh, you know, what's his face? What's that guy that used to play with the Vancouver Grizzlies, man? Brian Reeves. I remember Brian Reeves used to give it to Shaq, man. Brian Big Country Reeves. Sabonis, when he first got drafted, used to give it to Shaq. Not drafted, excuse me, signed with the NBA. But by that time, he was already 33 years old and broken down. But all these guys used to kick Shaq's ass. Shaq, as I mentioned before, Shaq got swept out of the playoffs 6 damn times. Six. 6 times. 94 by the Pacers, 95 by the Rockets, infamous fashion, 96 by the Bulls, payback, 98, excuse me, by the Jazz, 97 was 4-1. 98 was a sweep by the Jazz. 99, they got swept by the Spurs, I believe. And in 2007, the Heat got swept by the Bulls in a huge upset. They were the defending champion. And Skip should know better than this. Skip claims to have been covering sports for 50 years, but yet he makes the ridiculous assertion that Wilt Chamberlain did not take care of himself physically. What are you talking about? Wilt Chamberlain was a workout-aholic, and he didn't use PEDs. This guy stayed in the gym. If anything, what killed Wilt was he wore his heart out, working so damn hard, working out all the damn time, playing all those goddamn minutes in the NBA. Only fucking taking breaks on playoffs, a timeout, excuse me. Let's make a comparison, okay? Let's look at Wilt. Let's look at Shaq. Shaq's rookie year, he averaged 23 points and almost, I think, 14 rebounds. Phenomenal. Wilt, 37 points, 26 or 27 rebounds. Shaq career averages, think about 23 points, 10 rebounds. Wilt, 30 points, 23 rebounds. Shaq, 3 career 50-point games. Wilt, 122. Number of seasons Shaq led the NBA in block shots, 0. Now, they didn't count blocks when Wilt played, but he probably would have led the league in blocks every damn year that he played unofficially. The only other guy to give him uh, a challenge on that, two guys. The only two guys that could possibly challenge him in that regard would have been Bill Russell and Nate Thurman. But more than likely, Wilt would have led the league in rebounding every goddamn year he played. How many times did did Shaq lead the league in rebounding? 0. Wilt, 11. 11 of the 14 years that he played, he led the league in rebounding. The only year that he didn't lead it in rebounding, uh, one of the years, I should say, is 69-70. He was hurt. And Wilt led the league in rebounding that year. Number of seasons leading the NBA in assists. Shaq, 0. Wilt, 1. Wilt also is the unofficial leader in triple doubles. I know he's credited with 79, but most of his triple doubles would have came from blocks and a few from steals. Wilt probably had something around 600 to 700 career triple doubles. I'm not exaggerating. I used to put it more toward 400, 500, but the new numbers that I've seen from a guy that really studies this shit, I communicate with him, it's more like around 600 to 700 career triple doubles. So when it comes to the most dominant player of all time, there's no question it's Wilt Chamberlain. End of story. Now, my argument for Moses Malone. When you add the ABA to Moses Malone's NBA totals, Moses Malone has more points and he has far more rebounds. He was a rebound phenomenon, the greatest offensive rebounder in the history of the NBA. Also, Shaq played with a lot more talent generally than Moses Malone. Yes, Moses did go to Philly and play on that great team, 82, 83. But before that, Moses didn't play on a lot of great teams. Shaq, since he came into the NBA, got to play with Nick Anderson, right? And then Penny Hardaway, and then Horace Grant, Nick Anderson, Dennis Scott. I already said Nick Anderson. Dennis Scott. Then he went over and played with Eddie Jones and Robert Ory and Kobe Bryant and Nick Van Exel, Cedric Ceballos, J.R. Ryder. You know, this guy always played with great players. Then he went over to play with Dwayne Wade, and he played with LeBron James, and played with the Big Three in Boston. He played with Steve Nash. He played with, Amari Stoudemire. He always played with other great players. To the point where you look at his 4 championships, you're like, well, you should have won 4 championships. Maybe you should have even won more, Shaq. I'll tell you this. If you were to put Moses Malone on those teams that Shaq played on, I guarantee you they would have won more championships. And if you put Shaq on those teams that Moses played on, I'm not so sure they make it this far. Look at that roster, that '81 Rockets team that Moses Malone took to the finals, and put Shaq on there. You tell me that team goes to the final? No, they're not. They're not. They're probably going to lose in the first round, maybe second round at best. Moses Malone is not going to have problems with Utah in the pick and roll. So this is my response to that. Shaq is a great player. Fourth greatest center of all time is about right. Skip Bayless saying he's the greatest center of all time. That's capping. Okay, he's not. Just bullshit. Tell me what you guys think.